Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer in a new location, visiting some friends for the holidays over in Shelter Island. Mike, you are also in a new location. You are in a burning building over there that is the NBA these days. How are you doing on this fine Monday afternoon?
Doing good. Got to sleep in a little bit today, so needed a little recharge. Feeling pretty good for the week that should be pretty eventful, but feeling pretty good today.
Yeah, who knows what this week will hold. Usually this is a great week for NBA to be sort of featured, and people start to look at the NBA season as like officially starting once you hit Christmas Day. This year I think will be a lot different with all the COVID health and safety protocols and all the absences that we're going to have this year. So we will roll with the punches as we do. Today is now, how many games do we have today? 6 game slate now?
Yep.
Is that where we're at?
Yep.
It as the world turns, we'll see if we hold on 6 games. But let's get into the injury stuff. From the very start, let's talk about the Warriors situation, because Andrew Wiggins also went into health and safety protocols, and so now it's not just Jordan Poole, it's Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, and that is a lot of usage to leave the rotation. So what does this mean for Steph Curry? What does it mean for the Golden State Warriors rotation as a whole? Who benefits from this? They've played very deep this year. Will they continue to spread those minutes, or do you think any one person potentially stands out as to gain in this spot?
Yeah, it's super tricky, right? Because not only are you replacing Wiggins' offense, but you could make a case that replacing his defense is even a bigger piece. He's usually their primary point of attack defender. So that, you add that to, again, just losing Jordan Poole's ball handling. There's so many ways you got to replace those two guys on top of just the overall volume. So I was trying to think through who would fit best in the role situation. And honestly, given the way that Steve Kerr was talking about Jonathan Kuminga's growth as a shooter, that made me think that I feel pretty confident he's going to start. And I think it's going to be one. If he doesn't start, I'd feel confident the other way that Gary Payton 2 would start, especially in the matchup against the Kings. So I feel pretty sure that one of those two guys start. Damian Lee certainly be a candidate. I think Damian Lee and Kuminga fit better as filling in for the rotation spots there. I don't think Otto Porter Jr. moves well enough to be a 3. So I have concerns about him starting. Obviously, I don't think you're starting Chris Chiozza. He would just back up Steph. Bjelica as a 5, he wouldn't really make any sense either. Moses Moody makes sense too. I think he's a candidate. But I do feel pretty good about Kuminga. I think Kuminga and Damian Lee make a lot of sense. It's kind of similar. JTA is really more of a 4-man, kind of backing up Draymond, filling those minutes that way. So, I think Kuminga's obviously – and then Seth's going to just go completely ham. Per 36 in 301 minutes, he's 34, 5, and 7 without Poole and Wiggins on the floor this year. So against the Kings and their bad defense, he could just really light them up today.
So we saw Moses Moody start last game in the absence of Jordan Poole. Do you think that's up in the air, though, in terms of these two spots, in terms of it could be any combination of Moody, Kuminga, and Lee and Payton is kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think Moody's definitely a candidate, too. As you mentioned, the Celtics game he started there was on a short leash, didn't play well. They didn't even start in the next game. So I don't know. I feel like that was kind of one and done. But I think they do like Gary Payton up the bench. So I was thinking Damian Lee Kuminga kind of made the most sense.
Yeah,
but I don't feel confident in that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talk about this all the time. When you have a player that's absent, you have to think about how do they replace the minutes, but also how do they replace the role. And in this case with Andrew Wiggins, it's 2 roles, right? It's like primary wing defender and it's, secondary offensive usage piece in these lineups with Steph. And so I think both of Damian Lee and Kuminga fit that categorization a lot better. And you really do need somebody who can take on some usage when you move out Poole and Wiggins from the starting lineup, right? Because Dre and Looney can only really take on so much. And so they will be out there to facilitate lots of looks for Steph, but you need someone to take a little bit of pressure off of Steph. So you're not getting just, constant hedging out on all these screens and everything. But yeah, it looks like just an incredible spot for Stephen Curry's upside. Yeah. And I will say this on Golden State, they've been really deep all year long in terms of the number of players that they have, so they could spread these minutes around all the time, and they still could do that tonight. We're projecting like an 11-man rotation still, even without Wiggins and Poole. But in some of these spots, every once in a while, you get condensing of minutes on one or two players. And if that happens, there's just a ton of value to be had. So if there were one or two players that you could see instead of raising their minutes from mid-teens to low 20s or mid-20s, that actually it condenses on and somebody gets up into the 30s, who are the guys that you think could do that?
I mean, I don't feel really great about anybody, right? As far as like 30s, but besides the obvious guys. But if Damian Lee starts, you gotta feel pretty good about him getting close to 30. Kuminga could have the upside if he plays well, but definitely some downside there.
Yeah, I think Kuminga and Lee are the two guys that could do that. I don't think Gary Payton would be able to do that. I don't think Otto Porter. I don't think Iguodala. I think Kuminga and Lee are the guys that have a chance. So like if you're taking chances on upside in GPPs, and certainly these guys might become popular if a starting lineup is known, but those would be the shots that I'd be taking kind of right off the bat.
Yeah, and I mean they rested a lot of people, but I mean it's worth noting they did start Kuminga and Lee next to each other, certainly with different pieces. But I think that's a pretty good. That's kind of another reason why I was kind of leaning there after Moody kind of got pulled from that Celtics game.
Yeah. So in terms of new, COVID health and safety protocol issues today that have popped up, it doesn't seem like we've had any like huge surprises in terms of the names that have kind of entered into health and safety. And a lot of them are for games that are already canceled today. Like we're seeing Toronto, have to add pieces into it today. In terms of guys that have been added on tonight, is there anybody in particular that you wanted to kind of talk through?
From just COVID or just
from just COVID, from just health and safety protocols that is like new really, that was updated today? Okay.
No, nothing really new. We still haven't seen a couple teams, the Kings, Spurs, and Grizzlies. I'm sorry, the Grizzlies just filed, the Hornets didn't file. So that's kind of the big news right now that we just hit is John Morant getting a questionable tag. I don't know if you want to maybe hit that because he tweeted out. I got his tweet from this morning. He tweeted this morning. So full on cryptic Twitter is overjoyed right now with that one.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so we'll probably have to move the assumption to John Morant in, which was not an assumption that we had built out. He's been out for a while. I would assume there would be some sort of ramp up just because the Grizzlies generally are pretty conservative on how heavy they go on minutes and how they bring guys back. I mean, we saw the Jaren Jackson situation last year where it just took forever for him to get back. And even when he did, they were really light on minutes early. So I would expect if John Morant comes back, he will start tonight. But I would guess that he'd be in that like 28 to 30 type minute role, maybe 32 on the high end. I don't think he'd have the 34, 35, 36 that we've seen from him earlier in the season at different points.
And they had more than just that on their injury report. Let's pull their tweet up here. Because they had Tyus Jones got downgraded to questionable, and then the usual guys are out. Santi Aldama, Clark, Merrill, and Zaire has been out for protocols as well. So it'd be crazy if they just swap out Tyus Jones for Morant.
And I think that timing is always like, it's always interesting to me when you see a player returning that is coming back into play potentially when a player that's been playing those minutes is potentially coming back out of play. It kind of leads more credence to me in those directions where like maybe they're ready to have Ja back in part because Tyus is not doing so well or different things like that. But we'll keep an eye on that one. The other thing to note with Memphis there is that Dillon Brooks is not listed anywhere on that. And Dillon Brooks has not played in a back-to-back set this year yet. So theoretically good news. I mean, we've seen different teams with their injury reports this year not list players and then still come up, on the injury report. So, but fingers crossed, the Grizzlies have generally been pretty good on this stuff. So I think there's reason to be optimistic that Dillon Brooks plays in a back-to-back set tonight.
Yeah, they are. They just leave information out, but the information they do give us is usually pretty good most of the time. Yeah, because we didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know anything. I had no idea Ja was coming back today. Besides, they don't have as much beat coverage as some of the other teams, so you don't get as much information from them. Okay, let's talk about some of the other big questionables on this slate because we have a ton. In Boston, you've got Jason Tatum, Romeo Langford, and Dennis Schroeder, all questionable. They're already decimated with health and safety protocols, as is. They've been adding bodies in terms of 10-day contracts. And so what do you think the likelihood on seeing these guys? I mean, Tatum ankle sprain, Schroeder's an illness, so who knows, non-COVID illness. And then Romeo Langford with the neck issue. Yeah, Romeo, we got some information. Udoka said it was kind of just a soreness thing. He needed just a couple of days. So he's probably going to be game time. Tatum didn't really get much. Udoka didn't really talk too much about him. We'll see. I think he's going to play. We know Tatum plays through pretty much everything. The guy never misses games as long as he's not sick. And yeah, Schroeder's been sick for a little bit, right? Since Friday when he first got the illness tag. He's been out since. So you're talking about 3-4 days for him to get healthy. So you got to think he's got a pretty good chance to play too.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the case because they are already thinned out. No Josh Richardson, no Al Horford, no Grant Williams. It's not the star players that they have necessarily with Brown and Tatum, but it's pretty much all of the secondary guys. So they've been pretty thinned out. And the matchup with Philadelphia, figures to be a tough one as well defensively. Of course, all of that on the matchup side with Philadelphia comes down to whether Joel Embiid is available or not. And Joel Embiid is once again questionable. And so when you look at this Philadelphia injury report, you see they're without Shake Milton, Gorgeous Niang. Those guys are both in health and safety protocols. Furkan Korkmaz is out with a non-COVID related illness, and Andre Drummond is also out in health and safety protocols. So they're pretty thin in the front court. Usually they've used Andre Drummond, obviously, as the primary backup to Joel Embiid. And then at times they've used Gorgeous Niang in small ball lineups, but they wouldn't be able to really do that in this case because they don't have Gorgeous Niang. So you look to Charles Bassey as now the backup center in this spot. And I also know to you, like jokingly, Mike, that whenever we've seen Embiid questionable on the injury report, he's played. It's been when he's been not listed on the injury report that he hasn't played. So maybe we should just assume Embiid and Danny Green and Tyrese Maxey are all in, and maybe we should assume Steph Curry, who is not even listed on the injury report, is the one that's in doubt tonight because it's the Philadelphia 76ers, and who knows how they're going to attack the situation.
Yeah, you have to expect something with the Sixers, right? But yeah, losing Korkmaz too is like a big deal, just because for some reason Maxey can't go, Shakes. They just signed, like Tyler Johnson just got signed. He's gonna play, and he might even start, which sounds insane. But they would start Seth at the point, I would assume. But I'm just saying, like that could happen. But it would be they'd have to play, and even if Maxey plays right without Cork, if he could play, he could play a lot of minutes here. So yeah, we'll kind of have more information with this game being the first one on the slate when we do the show later today.
Yeah, thankfully we theoretically should have information before tip. You never know with Embiid and with the 76ers, but they are getting really, really thin on the secondary guys. And so you could see minutes really condense on the main guys here. We've seen Philadelphia be willing to do that earlier in the season when they battled all the health and safety protocols when they were without Embiid. We saw guys playing, 40, 42, 44 minutes some nights. So we know that they're willing to do that. We also know that even if they were to miss a few of these guys, they have enough bodies because they've brought in different people. So I don't think the game is in any sort of risk of being canceled. They should have enough bodies to play. They can still, we've got them with an 8-man rotation. We haven't added in Tyler Johnson yet. You could get B-Ball Paul in the mix as well, right? So they still have enough bodies to be able to play tonight.
Yeah, it'd probably, like you said, be Seabass, kick his ass. Seabass, Charles Bassey would be Embiid's backup, and Embiid would probably get up there in minutes if he can go.
I would think so. I would think Embiid, Maxey, and Tobias Harris are going to play a ton if those guys are all able to go. Harris is not on the injury report. Embiid and Maxey both are questionable. Now, if Maxey somehow didn't go and Embiid was able to, that's where you get into the Tyler Johnson starting scenario, right? Like that's where they're just so short on guards. It would basically be him or like Isaiah Joe, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been times when I missed like a bunch of dudes and they started Seth at the point. They kind of went pointless.
Yeah, but then who did they start at the 2?
Isaiah Joe or like you said.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they. I don't know. I was kind of kidding about Tyler Johnson. I don't think they would start him there. I think that he'd just be like the backup to Seth if everything went bad. Like no Maxey.
I think if they were without Maxey in this situation, not having Shake Milton, not having Furkan Korkmaz, I think it would be something like Seth, Isaiah Joe, and then one of Danny Green or Tybal.
If Danny Green can go, yep.
If Danny Green can go,
yeah.
And then Tobias and Joel. But I think they need to have Danny Green and Tybal be 3-4s. They can't have them be 2-3s. You know what I mean? So I think that means Isaiah Joe would have to play a ton in that scenario.
Yeah.
And I think that means Tyler Johnson would be playing off the street immediately, almost like 18 to 22 minutes type thing.
Yeah, pretty much non-cess plus a few other ones, like you said.
Exactly. Okay. Let's keep rolling through some of these big questionable tags. We've also got Paul George questionable on the injury report. He has been questionable for a while. We know the Clippers injury report has, I would say almost, I feel like questionable guys on the Clippers injury report are more like doubtful most of the year. And last year as well. We've seen this with Marcus Morris. We've seen it with Serge Ibaka last year, where he was listed questionable for like 3 or 4 games, and then he didn't play for another 3 months. So I'm skeptical on Paul George being available tonight, but what are your thoughts on his potential return?
I feel a little better because it's been getting closer and closer and closer. And Lou was kind of saying in the last game that he, had a shot to play in the last game. So that would mean he has a pretty decent chance to play here. So I think he's got a shot. I think I've always been like, no chance he plays, and we kind of had to project him in last time, even though I didn't really want to. But yeah, I think he's got a chance to play here today. For first time I felt that way since he got put on the injury report.
Yeah, and no Isaiah Hartenstein tonight, but they will have Serge Ibaka. So it seems like they just kind of fill those, big minutes with Serge. He's listed as probable. He had been away from the team for personal reasons. They will have Nick Batum, who was on a minutes limit in the first game back. So they have some pieces in the front court, but really Paul George kind of ties the whole thing together. So his presence will be really, really big. Our current projections have him assumed out. So it's a big difference, obviously, if Paul George is in or out in terms of projecting the Clippers, because without him, you get stronger projections on Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard and Reggie Jackson. Actually, I'm looking in I think our projections are meant to have Paul George in, but I think it's just a line mismatch that we have Paul George's minutes to Keon Johnson. So we'll have to update that.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of other big.
In terms of other big Serge, just to put the book on the split book, it's funny. Serge is getting the Kemba Walker treatment, right? Like you're not supposed to play, but like we need you, so last resort.
Right.
And then also worth noting, not having Marcus Morris means they probably can't go small. Lou said they can't really go small, so Zubats, should be looking at pretty secure minutes today.
Yeah, you would think, especially with them really not wanting to play Serge as much, that it'll be a situation where Zubats can play pretty much everything that he can handle. What he can handle is a question mark with Zubats because of foul trouble, conditioning, different things like that. But we have seen him at times in the past get up into the mid-30s in these types of situations. So a lot of potential upside for Zubats if it all cracks right. Okay, let's look at some smaller questionables on the slate. One of them is in Houston with Armoni Brooks. Houston is still without Kevin Porter Jr. and without Jalen Green, so the backcourt has been thinned out. You've seen Armoni Brooks really step up. Him and Garrison Matthews in over the course of the last few weeks have been kind of the thing that offensively in the Houston backcourt has kind of held everything together, and they've played really well. So, what do you think the likelihood of seeing Armoni play tonight is?
Yeah, I don't feel good about it. Ankle tweak kind of got ruled out pretty quick in that game when he first suffered it. It's been out for what happened, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday maybe. So he's probably, I think he's going to sit. So that puts probably Josh Christopher, who played pretty well in his first career start, especially in the first half. He really made an impact in the game. Silas even said after the game, like, when did you know Josh Christopher was going to start? When did you tell him? And he said the whole team just like assumed he was starting and they didn't even talk about it. So yeah, I think Christopher's. I honestly think Christopher should just take over. But the way he was playing, possibly a little bit biased. I think he's really fun. But yeah, I should be looking at minutes. You see the Garrison Matthews 36 minutes. Silas said after the game that he quote killed him with minutes.
Yeah.
So he's going to play a pretty good bit here, and pretty up tempo game. The Bulls play pretty fast. Rockets play pretty fast. We know Jayshawn Tate's going to run into a bad matchup here. Against some pretty good Bulls defenders. Javonte Green. I'll see some Alex Caruso as well. But yeah, Eric Gordon also has been really, really ball dominant lately. So even Armoni Brooks playing, it actually would help him because Christopher did a lot of ball handling. See 7 assists in the last game, so it's pretty straightforward. See some KJ Martin and those guys. We saw actually for the first time, I think all season, we saw Wood overlap with Şengün to kind of help fill the void in the front court minutes with some guys out. And Wood also said his knee's feeling good too, so you see some more playing time for him. So pretty decent matchup. The Bulls are a little bit vulnerable inside, so there's probably a lot of if the Rockets could hang in this game, maybe the Bulls are a little bit tired. It could be a pretty good environment.
Yeah, and I would also say this matchup with the Bulls, as we saw last night, with the Lakers, you can go small against the Bulls. And so probably not a great spot for Tice, probably just the Wood and Şengün minutes kind of as the bigs tonight.
Yep.
Okay. In terms of other news on the slate for the Bulls, Derek Jones Jr. Was ruled out. He was ruled out with that left hamstring strain. He was kind of a surprise, ruled back in last night, and it's been the hokey pokey since. So Alfonso McKinney should get back to having, a more solid role there. But really with DeMar DeRozan and Vooch and Caruso and Lonzo Ball, all there, those guys are just going to soak up as many minutes as possible. And then the secondary pieces are going to be kind of fighting for scraps based on matchups. So how else do you think Derek Jones Jr. absence impacts the Bulls rotation tonight?
Yeah, like you said, McKinney just got his second 10-day, so he's officially good to go. I think his contract ended yesterday, but he'll be in there. I saw a little bit of Kobe White, saw a little bit of Tony Bradley fill in for most of the non-Vooch stuff. But the starters just carried the minutes. Alex Caruso, those 2 games that got postponed, let his hamstring heal all the way. And, man, 38 minutes right there. So he's full on, ready to go. DeMar DeRozan, man, just completely went ham. Almost had a 60 usage rate in the fourth quarter, 19 points. Basically dived and said, hey, just let him run the offense and let him put the game away. And that's what he did. The Bulls just really owned the fourth quarter. So, I should expect, pretty good Javonte Green minutes and a really good matchup. Lonzo with a 17 potential assists last night, only getting 4 of them, which is garbage. Expect him to be out there. We already fired at that again today. So, it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and then the other teams, 3 other teams on the slate that have not filed the injury report yet, so we don't have information there. You got the Sacramento Kings, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Charlotte Hornets all have not updated. Obviously, the Kings and the Hornets have been highly impacted by health and safety protocols over the last 2 weeks, so that's always, could be a wild card in terms of how things settle there. The Spurs, we haven't seen it tear through the Spurs just yet, so I'm hopeful that we won't run into those issues, but with Cody Martin kind of going back in on the Hornet side the other day, I was just oh man, here we go. Just when we thought they were finally healthy again, they pull you back out. It's the opposite of Godfather. So what are you looking for on those teams in terms of injury news and notes today?
Probably Rashawn Holmes is the big question mark. Was questionable in the last game. Sounds like he has a chance to play today. This is coming after Damian Jones just had a career high 23 last night, so he would be highly impacted. But we're not going to get De'Aaron Fox, not going to get Davion Mitchell, so it'll be the Tyrese Halliburton show. Last 2 games for Halliburton, 21 potential assists per game, 18 drives per game, and almost 10 minutes of touch time. That's straight up Trey Luka stuff. So he's going to be really, really, really busy. Those guys aren't going to be able to play, so it should be pretty similar to the Rashawn Holmes question.
Yeah, and obviously, if he gets Rashawn Holmes back, that's the guy he's been best at generating potential assists with during the course of the last 2 years. Their pick and roll with Rashawn Holmes floater has been, dynamic in terms of the Kings offense. I do think, non-DFS related thing, but this time without De'Aaron Fox and with giving the ball to Halliburton all the time in his hands, I do kind of wonder if this leads to De'Aaron Fox and more trade rumors over the course of the next year or so. Just because I think they can run a very efficient offense with Tyrese being kind of the main guy, and Fox is, it hasn't worked so far there for them in terms of impact and winning basketball with him as kind of the lead guard. So,
yep. And then with the Hornets, really quick, no Cody Martin. So we saw, they got wrecked last night, but LaMelo was really ball dominant when he was out there. I think he had 21 potential assists or something crazy in 25 minutes, and he was just slinging it out there. His teammates couldn't hit shots. But kind of a super sneaky, this is kind of matchup-y, not really injury, against Gobert. I wouldn't be surprised if PJ Washington gets more minutes to kind of space out Gobert a little bit. So that's kind of something I was watching today. Plumlee hasn't really played all that well since he returned from that rib/calf/protocol stuff. So seeing how he responds, not exactly a spring chicken anymore. Makes sense to me to play PJ. But again, they might get absolutely wrecked. Number 1 offense this month versus the dead last defense. But the Hornets play really fast. If they can make this game close, it could be a really, really good environment.
Yeah, obviously we've seen really, really strong, high-scoring games from Utah. If you can find the right opponent to stay in the game, because Utah's been playing so fast and so efficiently offensively, they're just launching so many 3-pointers. It's just it's crazy this year. Okay, I think that'll do it for us in this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. If you like the free content that we're providing here, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, get all the notifications when we are going on the air. Also, make sure to like the video. It helps us generate revenues and be able to continue to deliver this free content. If you are joining us behind the paywall at Established Run's NBA DFS premium subscription, you will find Mike Gallagher and myself behind the paywall doing Establish a Show tonight at 5:30 Eastern, breaking down all the daily fantasy sports angles, updated injury information, and how our projections will get you ready to compete in tonight's slate. Best of luck out there in all your games tonight, and we will see you guys tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern, right back here in the same place, same time. Take care, everybody.